Welcome into 104.3 The Fans Halftime Chill, presented by Coors Light. Jake Shapiro, James Marilat, Will Peterson. Broncos trailing the Panthers 10-3 at halftime in Carolina. We actually pre-recorded this, so this is just came up. I'm kidding. We are live. But it feels like we could have pre-recorded this. But James, I got to start with you, man. What you're doing looks a little prettier than what's going on in Charlotte. Where are you at, my man?
I am at Baha Mar in the Bahamas, and I just spent an hour and a half of my time here watching Russell Wilson throw for, 30 yards? And the Broncos put up 3 points. So if we'd have pre-recorded this, we would have been wrong because we would have said, hey, the Broncos put up 10. It's what they always do at halftime. They couldn't even muster that. They had 3 good plays in the first half. 3. It was the throw there at the end of Cortland Sutton, which set up Brandon McManus's miss. There was the run by Latavius Murray, which set up Russell Wilson's fumble. And then there was the botched punt by the Panthers, which did set up a 5-play, 18-yard drive and got the Broncos on the board. Guys, we've watched a lot of bad football this year, including the Colts game. I don't think we've seen anything worse than what we just watched.
What's the name of an eye doctor, an optometrist, right? I think I need to see an optometrist after that. My eyes hurt. I think I'm going to watch TikToks during the second half. I don't know. I'm trying to think about what to do, man. But yeah, you know what? The thing is, the Broncos got the breakout run play that we've been hoping for them to get all season. They got the dumbest turnover from the Panthers possible, and they still have 3 points. How is this? I'm texting the group with you guys. I'm like, what do we want? How is this happening?
Yeah. Well, listen, at this point, if you told me George Paton was planted by the Raiders or the Chiefs or the Chargers to destroy the Broncos for the next decade, I'd believe it. Like, people talk about how Josh McDaniels was planted by the Patriots. Josh McDaniels did the damage he did to this franchise compared to what George Paton has done. I mean, raise your hand if you've seen Nick Benito, Jonathan Cooper, or Baron Browning in the first half. The 3 guys that were going to replace Nick Chubb, who got a forced the fumble in his game in the first half. The receivers, I mean, Cortland Sutton didn't have a catch till the final 2 minutes of the half. Kendall Hinton is probably their best receiver. He wouldn't make most teams' roster, and they continue to force Montrell Washington down our throat. Like, oh, he's our Tyreek Hill. I mean, it's a mess. It's just an absolute mess. I honestly, if he was planted to destroy the Broncos, that would be a more logical explanation than he's actually decided these were good moves to make.
Yeah, I just tweeted, guys, that there's a very real chance the Broncos get the number 2 overall pick in the 2023 NFL draft, and of course have to send that pick to Seattle. So yes, that would be evidence of George Paton has been the main culprit in all of this. You can blame Nathaniel Hackett all you want. You can blame Russell Wilson all you want. But it's George Paton's team. We're far enough removed from the Elway era that people can't back on John Elway and say it's still his fault. No, it's George Paton's fault at this point, particularly on the big decisions, head coach and quarterback, which have just gone disastrously wrong. But it is halftime show, so we're going to keep it focused on this game for now. Jake, you mentioned it, like, and James highlighted it too, 3 big plays, and yet they still only have 3 points. Is the Clint Kubiak thing making any difference at all? Because I feel like I'm watching Nathaniel Hackett call plays again. Like, we had that one little blip last week against the Raiders where we're like, okay, this looks better. Nothing in that first half showed me this Clint Kubiak thing is any better.
Well, I believe the Raiders' DVOA on defense is the worst in the NFL. Carolina's 21st, so not great, but at least respectable. Like, they're not the worst defense, right? I don't think I've seen much of a difference between these 2 play callers. But with that said, Nathaniel Hackett did have more weapons. Like, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler aren't playing in this game. Obviously, Javante's hurt. Melvin Gordon is gone now. We're seeing a cast of characters around Russell Wilson that are really outcasts compared to what is around other quarterbacks in the NFL. What I do take a problem with is something that DMAC always talks about is we're trying to make Montrell Washington happen. He's a 5th-round pick rookie. He's a minimum contract player. Why are the Broncos forcing Montrell Washington the ball, giving the ball to Montrell Washington over and over again, especially after that big play, and not giving their $250 million quarterback a chance to do anything with it. Russell Wilson didn't make one passing attempt after the Broncos recovered that punt back. So I'm trying to understand what the Broncos thinking is, because from a micro perspective of, play over play calling, it's not working. And from what they're doing as a roster construction and how they want to build their team out, it doesn't make sense either.
No, and Jake, it started on the first play of the game, right? Like, once again, third straight game, the Broncos' opening drive started inside their own 10, right? It was the 4-yard line against the Titans. It was the 8-yard line last week. It was the 5-yard line this week. So whatever you put together as your script, you probably have to throw it out the window, or so you would think. But not with Clint Kubiak. We're going to come out and run the bubble screen from the 5 and lose 3 or 4 yards. And now you're just running a quarterback sneak to get out of the shadow of your own goalposts. I mean, that just is a microcosm of this team, though, right? Like, just a terrible play call. Your opening play, and maybe it's a microcosm of how bad this roster is too. Your opening play is a bubble screen to Montreal, Washington, and you lose 3 or 4 yards at your own 5-yard line. Just an absolute disaster in every possible way.
All right, James, let's talk about the play that kind of flipped the first half, in my opinion, and that was Carolina's fake punt, because Pat Surtain II made a great tackle. They were going to get off the field. Instead, the special teams isn't ready. I get it's 4th and 1, 4th and 1.5, whatever, but it's an easy spot to run a fake. Carolina runs it right up the middle, and then all of a sudden, Sam Darnold looks like a number 3 overall pick should. He marches them down the field, burns Pat Surtain. Although it was a perfectly thrown ball to DJ Moore to get the touchdown. Like, you do have to give credit where it's due. Surtain was trailing him, and DJ Moore had a nice catch on, again, a perfectly thrown ball. But you mentioned it on Twitter, special teams once again asleep at the wheel. The fake punt changed the vibe of that half, particularly because Carolina marched down and got a touchdown.
No doubt. And imagine if you stop it, right? You're basically at midfield. I mean, they're 1 9-yard pass to Kendall Hinton away from being in McManus country. So, I mean, that could have changed the game the other way to some extent and put this thing right on pace for like that 6-3 that a lot of us were predicting. But yeah, the one big special teams play, and who did it go against? It went against the Broncos. Montreal Washington's had several opportunities at punt returns, had to fair catch a bunch from inside his own 20, didn't do anything when he had the opportunity to run him back. It's a unit that just continues to fail to make plays, and that's a moment to make a play. They run a fake punt on you. You got to be ready for it. You got to be disciplined. You got to be well coached. You got to be expecting it, and they weren't. And lo and behold, it worked. And it was the least surprising thing so far of this NFL Sunday is that the Broncos special teams was asleep at the wheel. I mean, raise your hand if that shocks you. Nobody's raising their hand in our viewing audience at the moment.
Well, I will say, James, I think that the Broncos actually came away with the advantage if you consider the 2 big special teams plays in the game, the 4th down fake and the muffed punt. I think that muffed punt was actually a bigger advantageous play for the Broncos than it was disadvantageous that Broncos let go of that 4th down, because so what? They converted on 4th and short. It just so happened that it was a fake. That happens all the time. It's what happened after that they just continue to drive down the field and makes a mistake. To me, the big play of the first half was the Broncos getting that 52-yard rush with Latavius Murray, and then 2 plays later, Russell Wilson having absolutely no pass protection and fumbling a ball away that he was trying to throw. That seemed like an opportunity for the Broncos to score. For me, going back to that fake, so what? The Broncos get the ball in plus territory or close to plus territory. Their field goal kicker can't hit, and their offense can't move the ball. Like, they actually moved the ball into plus territory and were cooking a little bit after that Latavius Murray run, had the defense on their heels, and they could have done something there. So to me, that was the play of the first half.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's hard to argue. There haven't been a lot of positive plays, period, for the Broncos. I mean, there's been 3. The Latavius Murray run was a big one. The muff punt that the Panthers had was a big one. And then, like I said, the pass to Cortland Sutton. That's it. That's 3 highlights from the entire first half. They've done nothing else that's been even remotely memorable. But I look at it, it's 10-3 at half. That should be a game you're looking at and say, this is anybody's ball game. It seems like a Herculean task to come back and win this game. Down 10-3 to a Panthers team that's awful. I think that says a lot about where this franchise is at the moment, that seems insurmountable.
All right, well, that's a good job, probably our final topic of conversation here, and that is if they lose. And like you said, 10-3 feels insurmountable. They're probably going to lose. I was on board. I thought there would be a change after the Raiders game. I did. And they did make a change. They cut a veteran, and a veteran who people know. They cut Melvin Gordon. That was the change. But, James, let's flash forward to tomorrow morning. Will Outen have to go? Will Hackett go? Will Greg Penner, who is in Carolina, we've seen the photos, finally realize he has to make a coaching staff change at 3-8 and on track to pick number 2 overall in the NFL draft?
Well, anything short of Hackett is just a move to give the appearance that you're making. Like, if they fire Justin Outen, who cares? The three of us have as much impact on the game as Justin Outen, it appears. Like, what is he doing? I mean, he's the classic scene from Office Space. So what is it you do here? So I don't know that does it. I have no belief that they're going to fire Nathaniel Hackett, because if you're George Paton, why on earth would they let you do this again? You interviewed 10 people, you put together the list, and you selected Nathaniel Hackett. And 11 games in, it's such a disaster you have to move on. Well, then you're gone too. I think they're attached to the hip. So I think they're both back next year, believe it or not. I think this ownership group is going to say, look at the injuries. It was the newness. I mean, they'll have all sorts of excuses. The minions will run with it and tell us it's all true. We'll have the stat of, Tim Patrick missed 17 games and this, that, and the other. Never mind that George Paton, even though that happened in training camp, didn't address it and get another weapon in here. I think they're both attached at the hip. So if you're George Paton, the only way you survive is if Nathaniel Hackett survives. I think he's coming back. I think both of them are coming back.
To me, there's a case to be made that firing Hackett in season doesn't do a ton to help you, because you're not trying to turn the season around and get playoff performance. I would actually make the case now that we are seeing people actively in the Broncos fan base go, why would I want to spend my Sunday doing this? We saw 7,000 people not show up to the Raiders game last week. If you want to continue to have a good fan base at your home games and have the chance of winning games going forward, I think Hackett needs to be gone quicker than James returns from the Bahamas.
I like it. Well,
tomorrow.
James, you're a true sport to come on from your vacation. We appreciate it. Jake Shapiro, I'm Will Peterson. Thanks so much for tuning in to 104.3 The Fans Halftime Show presented by Coors Light. And I guess enjoy the second half, everyone.